So I want to tell you a story about my Halloweens with the Halloween-lovingest guy that I ever knew, who also happened to be my dad, Joe DiSanto. Growing up, I had the interesting distinction of being the only kid on the block who had his own spook house in the garage. My dad used to put this thing together painstakingly in the days preceding Halloween, and he would charge like a dime or something to neighborhood kids, donate it all to UNICEF or some other charitable organization. And it featured such memorable characters as Witchy Pooh and her little cat, Pie Wacket, who the beam of the flashlight would always reveal to have some kind of severed human finger or something in his mouth. But the best of all with Dad was trick-or-treating. Now, I trick-or-treated until I was, I think, 14 or 15, and all but the last year of that, my dad went along with me. And my brother and whatever of our friends were fortunate enough to come along too. And Dad was pretty meticulous about his costumes, which were marked by two major characteristics. One, you could never see who was in the costume. They were always full body, head to toe. And two, his absolute refusal to break character for any amount of time to any human whatsoever, me, my brother, my mom, until the costume came back off. So for the moment we first saw him wearing it to the time it came back off, he was the costume. The costumes were elaborate. It might be one iteration of a recurring character called the Cruel Ghoul, who seemed to get crueler every year. Or a full-bodied, thunder-breasted version of that he called Nurse Ratchet with giant syringe full of blood and things like that. And out the door we'd go, down the street trick-or-treating. Let me offer you a brief reenactment. Trick-or-treat, trick-or-treat. My, don't you all look scary. Candy. Aren't you a little bit of a big boy to be candy? House after house. It's kind of the way it went down. Leaving some creeped out expressions in our wake, but a good time was always had, and then we'd go back up and tally up the candy. It was probably my 13th year trick-or-treating, my 13th Halloween, when we were getting ready to go, and Dad was getting ready to put on his costume, and he said, "Leo, do you have the soap and the eggs and the toilet paper?" And I said, "Dad, whatever are you talking about?" And he said, "Well, you know, for the people that don't have any candy." See, in my father's world, not having candy was akin to some kind of mortal sin. It was an absolute dereliction of your duties as a member of civilized society to not be holding down your porch and giving out candy on Halloween. So a man who was law-abiding under all other circumstances, it was completely justified to do something like this. So that Halloween, I went out and soaped houses with my dad. It's a lot of fun. After we finished trick-or-treating, me and my buddy Danny decided to go out for some further mischief, and Dad said, be careful, don't get in trouble. But we were 13-year-old kids, so of course we did. We turned it into something more perverse entirely and far less well-intentioned. It stopped mattering to us whether the houses had candy or not. We kind of stopped checking. Instead, we just tried to concentrate as many gooey and disgusting things as possible into a single lobbable device. And we got pretty good at it. There's the rotten fruit, the eggs, things like that. And of course, festooning every tree, every house of every kid down the street we didn't like, that little prick from first grade, with toilet paper. I think it was our very first time doing this, too, that somebody actually called the cops, who caught up with us and stopped us and searched our bags, which had bars of soap in them. But somehow, fate was on our side that Halloween, and the cops didn't find the soap. They let us go. Danny's mom came and picked us up. Danny's mom, with her thick Long Island accent and her chain smoking, who somehow could always smell it whenever we'd taken a drag of a cigarette or a puff of weed, sniffs the air in the car and says, "Why do you guys smell like soap?" So my dad died of cancer in June of 2015, and I inherited his house where I now live alone. And 4 Halloweens have passed since then, and I am absolutely flabbergasted and maybe even a little bit offended that he hasn't haunted me yet. I mean, you'd really think a guy with his kind of macabre sensibilities would get around to it, and I've actually openly invited him to do so. I mean, here I am, his morbid Halloween-loving son, who tells stories to people in bars in York wearing zombie-printed designer underwear under his jeans, And the old man still hasn't appeared to me yet. So since it's Halloween season and I'm on microphone again, I'm just going to reiterate that that's one apparition that'll always be welcome at my door. Thanks so much, folks.